What is up, guys and gals? It's me, Thomas Channel 1 here, and today we're going to be doing something that most people have already done before, but with me this is a little bit different because I have never done this before. We're going to be doing the top 15 Thomas and Friends episodes, at least from the original series, from season 1 through season 6. We're just going to be doing my top 15 favorite episodes, and to start this off, we have to start with number 15 being Harvey to the Rescue. Just because, I like the overall design of Harvey, and I think this episode really captured his look and how he feels and how everything works for him. I think this is a really good episode. I think, people who have a different quality to them should definitely watch this, because it's definitely something to be thinking about because of this excerpt that we'll play right here.
The next morning, Sir Topham Hatt sent the engines off to a useful day's work. "Maybe my coming here wasn't such a good idea, sir," Harvey chuffed sadly. "Nonsense," said Sir Topham Hatt. "But the engines don't like me. I'm too different." "Different is what makes you special."
That's something I really enjoy about Harvey to the Rescue, because being different does make you special. It really does. And coming in at number 14, we have the episode from Season 5, Episode 2, Horrid Laurie. Now, the reason why I like this episode is because, you introduce new characters, and they're nothing but jerks. And in the end, they all get what's coming to them. It's just karma. It really is. This is the best episode describing karma, and it's like one of my favorite ones because the villain actually gets what they deserve. So, let's play this little excerpt here.
Percy looked at the lorry. "What's this lump of steaming scrap iron?" he teased. "I'll be back," replied the lorry, "so you can wipe that silly smile off your smoke box." "Ha!" said Percy, and wished him loudly. Then Butch, the breakdown vehicle, arrived. He was towing the lorry from the flour mill. "What happened?" asked Toby's driver. "He was overloaded with flour," came the reply, "and he broke down." "Not very useful now, are you?" said Toby. "Grrr," replied the lorries. Then James whistled excitedly. "They're bringing in the third lorry on a barge." "What happened to that one?" James asked. "Stupid lorry was reversing and fell straight into the sea," said the tow truck man. Later, Thomas arrived. He looked at the three lorries and laughed. "Well, well, well, the Brothers Grimm, smashed, broken, and sunk."
That line just always makes me laugh, and always, it always makes me think, these guys did get what was coming to them. So, these are the three villains of the show that actually get what they deserve. Unlike in A Close Shave for Duck, where all we hear about is just, the Fat Controller sent him off in disgrace. So, without further ado, let's get to the next one. Coming in at number 13, we have the episode Henry and the Elephant from Season 4, and I really dig this episode because, it's just a classic, laughing story, but this episode, in all actuality, was, it was shown after what's it called? The Engines on Strike episodes, I suppose. This was the missing episode that was supposed to be happening. Don't worry about that background. That's just my Xbox telling me something. So, it just kind of was like, this episode's pretty funny. So, let's play a quick excerpt.
Trouble. The block was indeed alive and very strong. It began to push the train backwards. Out of the tunnel came Henry, then the cars, and last of all, a large, cross elephant. "Well, I never," cried the foreman. The workman gave him some cake. He drank 3 buckets of water and was just about to drink another when Henry let off steam. Cried the elephant. Water went all over Henry. Poor Henry.
That episode always makes me laugh, as you could hear off camera. When you could hear it in the background there. I was laughing along because that's just something really funny. You see an elephant come out and it sprays water. It's something that you see all the time. So it's kind of funny. So without further ado, let's get into number 12 real quick here. And coming in at number 12, we have the episode Grande Puff. Now, yes, this episode is one of my favorites. I never actually saw it until I was more of a teenager. Like, the first time I ever saw this episode was, I think, when I was, like, 11 or 12, something of that nature. I didn't start watching any of the season 4 stuff until way later in life when I actually knew it existed. Because back then, the only way I was able to watch any of the original Thomas the Tank Engine series was on the discs and some VHSs that I had. So I only thought that was the only way you could watch those episodes, and that was the only way you could really figure things out. So, you know, I never watched it until I got my own cell phone or smartphone, excuse me, and I started watching them online more as like a more daily thing, and I started realizing, oh, there's actually more than I thought. Okay, then. So, without further ado, let's play a clip from Grande Puff here.
Never mind, Grande Puff. We're only young ones. Well, you'd better mind. Unless you want to end up like Smudger. Oh, Grande Puff, whatever happened? Smudger, said Duke, was a show-off. He rode roughly and often came off the ring. I warned him to be careful, but he took no notice. Listen, Dookie, he snarled. Who worries about a few spills? We do here, I said, but Smudger just laughed. Until one day, manager said he was going to make him useful at last. Smudger stopped laughing then. Well, why? What did he do? He turned him into a generator. He's still out there behind our shed. He'll never move again.
And, you know, with that, I think this is kind of another one of those episodes that falls under the category of the villain getting what they deserve, because Smudger, of course, you know, he was the American engine over on the British Railway, so, you know, us Americans, you know, hey, I have nothing against us, but, you know, sometimes we do need to get what we deserve, so, yeah, I suppose in this case, you know, Smudger did get what he deserved, being a generator. And this is the only image that we have of him being a generator, because after this episode, as you can see on the red footplate here, he was later turned into Rheneas's model. So, you know, that's what happens. You know, you do something stupid, you pay the price. So, anyways, without further ado, let's get into a number 11. And coming in at number 11, we have the episode Escape from Season 3. This episode kind of just is one of those classic, you know, I'm going to help out in any sort of situation I can, and being a Boy Scout myself, we try to help out in any situation that we can, and this situation where it's, you know, you see somebody in need, and you come and you help them in any sort of situation at all. So, let's play a clip of this real quick.
He was just shunting,
ready
for his return journey, when... That sounds like a steam engine, he thought. The hiss came again. Who's there? Asked Douglas. A whisper came. Are you Sir Topham Hatt's engine? I am proud of it. Well, I'm Oliver, and I'm with my brake van Toad. We've run out of coal and have no more steam.
Let me fix the screen here a bit.
Escaping. From what? Scrap. Douglas shivered. Then he remembered Edward's story about saving Trevor. I'll be glad to help you. It'll have to look, though, as if you're ready for scrap and I'm taking you away. Their drivers and firemen agreed to help, too. Everyone worked fast. No time to turn round. I'll run tender first. Come on.
And, you know, with this scenario, you know, it's really one of those things where it's like, yeah, that's really cool. He was able to pretty much bring somebody back from almost getting destroyed by diesels, you know? I mean, granted, you know, that's literally Diesel and that's Mavis, but, you know, you get the situation. So, and, you know, I think this is one of those stories. It's like, you know, hey, this is really cool. That's something that, you know, a lot of people can't really do nowadays. So, you know, I think it's really amazing that they were able to capture that feel in this episode. So without further ado, let's get into number 10. And coming in at number 10, we have the episode Tender Engines. Now, this episode kind of stood out to me because it's like, hey, that's kind of funny, you know, pulling a prank on somebody. That happens to everybody, and it's not just one person who's in on it. Everybody's in on it. So, you know, and this was also one of the episodes that they featured Flying Scotsman, or featured Flying Scotsman in. And he's one of my absolute favorite, engines that I still have from the wooden railway era. Thanks, Thomas Wood. Well, go watch my rant video on that. But anyways, I dig this episode because it's freaking hilarious. You don't see this ever, and the sunset in the end of this episode is really nice. So without further ado, let's play this.
6, and you can have them this evening. 6 lovely tenders, chortled Henry. What a splendid sight I'll be. Henry was excited all day. Do you think it will be all right? He asked for the umpteenth time. Of course, said Duck. They're all ready now. The other engines waited where they could each get a good view.
That sunset view.
A splendid sight at all. His 6 tenders were very old, dirty, and filled with boiler sludge. Had a good washout, Henry, called a voice. That's right. You'll feel a different engine now. Henry was not sure, but he thought the voice belonged to Gordon.
So, you know, I think that's really cool that that episode was able to happen. So, let's pause that. We've already gotten into that episode. That's number 11. But without further ado, let's get into number 9. Coming in at number 9, we have No Joke for James, and I like this episode because it teaches kids not to lie. It teaches them not to... I like the message in this story because it teaches them, you know, not to be rude, and it teaches them not to, you know, be... It teaches them not to do things. I just like the moral of this story because, you know, you do something stupid, you need to pay the price. So, you know, in this case, lying is definitely not something good. So, let's play an excerpt from this.
Thomas was shunting shining new coaches. Good morning, James. Are those coaches for me? Asked James hopefully. No, these are for Gordon's Express. I'll fetch your freight cars next. But James was going to play a trick on the other engines. Actually, Thomas, I'm taking the coaches. Sir Topham Hatt asked me to tell you. What about the cars? Asked Thomas. Give them to Gordon. Come on, Thomas, said his driver. Orders are orders. So when James's driver returned, James was coupled to the coaches and he puffed away. Thomas returned with the freight cars, and a few minutes later, Gordon arrived. Where's the express? Thomas told him about James, and so here are your cars. Gordon was very cross, and so was his driver. Wait till Sir Topham Hatt hears about this. Meanwhile, James was enjoying himself enormously. What a clever plan! What a clever plan! He chuffed. Then he saw Sir Topham Hatt. Some jokes are funny, but not this one, James. You have caused confusion. Yes, sir, said James. You will now stay in your shed until you are wanted.
That's one of those things where it's like, you know, can I have a cookie? No. And you do it anyway, and then your parents walk in on you and you're eating the cookie that they told you not to have. So, I think it's one of those I think it's one of those episodes that teaches children, you know, if you do something really bad, you gotta pay the price for it. And in this case, it's, you know, you gotta stay in the shed for a while, but in most cases, it's you're grounded for a day, or you're grounded for, you know, if I'm putting you in timeout or something of that nature. So, that's what I like about that. I just like the moral and the message of this story. So, without further ado, let's go to number 8. Coming in at number 8, we have the episode called Edward's Exploit, one of the last few episodes of Season 2, where Edward breaks down in the middle of nowhere, and he's got nothing to go on, but you know, everybody's cheering him on, basically saying, you got this, you know, this will work out. So, you know, I like the way this episode pans out, because it teaches you not to give up, and I like the message that this story has to give. So there's always a way that sometimes you have to look for a different way around things, and in this case he had to. So let's play a little clip from that.
Repairs took some time. One of your crank pins broke, Edward, said his driver. We've taken your side rods off. Now you're like an old-fashioned engine. Can you get these people home? They must start back tonight. I'll try, sir, promised Edward. Edward puffed and pulled his hardest, but his wheels kept slipping, and he could not start the heavy train. The passengers were anxious. The driver, fireman, and conductor went along the train, making adjustments between the coaches. We've loosened the couplings, Edward. Now you can pick up your coaches one by one, just as you do with freight cars. That'll be much easier, said Edward. Come on, he puffed and moved cautiously forward. The first coach moving helped to start the second, and the second helped the third. I've done it, puffed Edward. Steady, boy.
So that's one of the cooler things about this episode, is that it teaches you never to give up, and it teaches you how to, you know, go about things. And it's one of those it's one of the greater things about this episode. I really enjoy the fact that this episode teaches you not to give up, and that if you look for a different way around, if you look for a way around it, you'll be able to find that way. And you know, it's a really cool thing that this episode teaches that. So now on to number, what are we? 7? We're on 7, yeah. And coming in at number 7, we have the episode The Deputation. Now, I like this episode because of, again, the message that it sends. If you form together to fight for something that you love, you fight for it, and in the end, if that something has not been fought for completely, then you will get, if it hasn't been fought for completely, and you do enjoy the way it works and the way things go in your favor, then you'll be able to get what you need out of that situation. And in this case, the engines did not want Donald and Douglas to leave the island of Sodor, because they're really good workers, and they know how to handle snow, and they know how to do things. I think it's just one of those things. And that scene with Percy and the Fat Controller, I think that scene's just freaking funny. I think it's hilarious. Every time I watch it, it leaves me in stitches. So let's continue. Let's do a little clip out of this.
Later, Sir Topham Hatt spoke to the engines. I had a deputation. I understand your feelings, and I've given a lot of thought to the matter. He paused impressively. Donald and Douglas, I hear that your work in the snow was good. You shall have a new coat of paint. The twins were surprised. Thank ye, sir. But your names will be painted on you. We'll have no more mistakes. Thank you, sir. Does this mean that the both of us? Sir Topham Hatt smiled. It means, but the rest of his speech was drowned in a delighted chorus of cheers and whistles. The twins were here to stay.
Now, you see, I like the way that works. I think it's really cool that they were able to fight for the twins, and that they wanted them to stay, and the Sir Topham Hatt was thinking about things, you know, trying to keep them together, but he was also trying to, you know, not to give up on them, and that's how it works. Then that's how things go. If you fight for something you believe in, then in the end you should get what you need done. So on to number 6. And coming in at number 6, we have the episode Pop Goes the Diesel. I did a Goof episode with Ice Star 552. This episode was kind of fun. This kind of episode was just hilarious. You know, if you don't ask for help, you're not going to get it. If you don't think about things before you do it, you're never going to get anywhere in the end. And in this episode, the only reason why I chose this episode really is because this song is so funny. I mean, it's just really funny, and in the end, I suppose Diesel kind of got what was coming to him by having to help the workmen clean up. So, without further ado, let's play this clip.
Diesel had to help the workmen All the cars were laughing and singing at him. Cars are waiting in the yard, tackling them with easel. Show the world what I can do, gaily boasts the diesel. In and out he creeps about, like a big black weasel. When he pulls the wrong cars out, pop goes the diesel.
I like that song. I think it's kind of funny because, you know, if you're gonna make a mistake, someone's gonna tease you, and you know, in this episode, it just happens to be the troublesome trucks. So, I think it was really funny in a good way that they made this episode. On to number 5. Here we go. We're coming down to the wire, guys. Coming in at number 5, and let's just be honest here. The last 5 episodes are in season 1 because I absolutely loved the first season. This is kind of what I grew up on because I had a lot of the DVDs. So, you know, let's put it this way. This episode is called Thomas Saves the Day, and it's, I believe, episode 7 of season 1, where Thomas goes and saves the day. He goes and saves James after he comes into a big crash, and we learn about the breakdown crane, and the, you know, we learn about all of that. So it's pretty cool, and I think it's a really nice way to teach kids that if there is something that does happen, and you know, there's always a way that you can get help for it. Like if you get hurt doing something, like for instance, you break your arm, you call, you know, the paramedics or somebody, or you have somebody take you to the hospital where they can give you aid, something of that nature. So it teaches kids that there is a way for someone to help, and if no one does help, you need to be the one to help. So, you know, that's kind of the way I feel. And the adventure begins kind of capitalized on that a bit more, where it didn't exactly tell you the whole story as to where this episode follows the book almost to the dot, except for with the minor alteration of James's paint job, which you can find an alternate version on YouTube. I don't know which channel it is, but you can find an alternate version on it. But I like this episode because it teaches you that if there's a problem, you have to help.
There was also a small coach and 2 strange things his driver called cranes. That's the breakdown train, he told Thomas. The cranes are for lifting heavy things like engines and coaches and freight cars. One day, Thomas was in the yard. Suddenly, he heard an engine whistling. Help! Help! A freight train came rushing through much too fast. The engine was James, and he was frightened. His brake blocks were on fire. They're pushing me! They're pushing me! He panted. On! On! Laughed the freight cars, still whistling, help! Help! Poor James disappeared.
I think that was a really good clip there. I wanted to play the breakdown clip, or the breakdown crane clip, but I thought this one was a bit better to use for an analogy. You know, as if there's, you know, if you know there's help, you can use it and you can get that person help. And if, you know, in that sort of situation. And you know, I suppose I'll play the rest of this.
I'd like to teach those freight cars a lesson.
So, and with that clip, it also teaches that bullying is not allowed. So, in the end, you know, something that should not be allowed is bullying, and that is something that this entire world still struggles with. So, anyways, without further ado, let's get into number 4. And coming in at number 4, we have the episode Foolish Freight Cars, where James is able to get back at those dastardly, troublesome trucks and foolish freight cars and everything. He's able to get back at them. But I like this episode because, like in Edward's exploit, it also gives the audience the idea of that you need to never give up on something, and if you're going to set out to do something, you need to do it. So, you know, if you're going to set out there to do something, you need to, you know, follow through, and this time James follows through on, you know, getting those trucks in line. So let's play this little excerpt here.
The cars tried hard to make him give up, but he still kept on. Sometimes their brakes would slip on, and sometimes their axles would run hot. And each time the trouble had to be put right. And each time James would start again, determined not to let them beat him.
And this episode, it teaches kids, you know, not to be beaten by, you know, the small challenges in life. So, like for instance, with James and the freight cars and their brakes slipping on, and them telling him, "You can't pull us, you can't." you know, you're not good enough to pull us and everything like that. And that when people start to discourage you, that's when you need to realize, yes, I need to keep going with this, because if I don't, they're gonna tease me forever, call me a quitter, call me something, you know, something that I don't want to be called. So I like the fact that this episode kind of capitalizes on that idea. So without further ado, let's go into the top 3. Coming in at number 3, we have the episode Tenders and Turntables. Now, I like this episode because it gives you the moral of the story is, you know, correction, give me a second, I need to remember this. The moral of the story is, don't be selfish about things that you have no control over. Like, for instance, in this episode, Thomas goes to run his branch line, and the tender engines now have to fetch their own coaches, and they don't like that because they've been used to the coaches being able to be brought to them for so long. And, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, you know, just because you have to do an extra job, don't be bitter about it. Don't do it with an attitude. You know, do it with, you know, do it with a smile on your face. Make it a bit easier on yourself. Do something yourself every now and then, you know?
Hello, called Thomas. Playing tank engines? Sensible engine. Take my advice. Scrap your tender and have a nice bunker. Gordon said nothing. Even James laughed when he saw it. Take care, hissed Gordon. You might stick too. No fear, chuckled James. I'm not so fat as you. I mustn't stick, thought James. He stopped on just the right place to balance the table. It could now swing easily. Gordon arrived in time to see everything. James turned much too easily. The wind puffed him round like a top. He couldn't stop. Well, said Gordon. Are you playing roundabouts?
Now, this, like I said, you don't need to be bratty and selfish about things, and in this episode, I kind of feel like, you know, James kind of gets what's coming to him, because he's being you know, he kind of teased Gordon there at the beginning, you know, saying, I'm not so big as you, you know, and in this instance, I suppose James kind of gets what's coming to him, because he's a bit lighter than Gordon, and he's sitting in the middle of the turntable to the point where it's just balanced. So without further ado, let's get into number 2. Episode 2 is Henry's Special Coal, and I like this episode because I have a personal connection with Henry. Being a kid, when I was a kid, I used to get sick all the time, and not even my doctors knew what was going on half the time. And I still have a relation to Henry because I still get sick every now and then, and every time I get sick, I think, well, I'm just like Henry. He was sick all the time, so he can't really pull trains. He's always not feeling well. And in this episode, they kind of get, like, for instance, they give him the right medication, I suppose. And that's the way I feel today, because for some of my old viewers who know this, I have IBSD, which consists of celiac, ulcerative colitis, and Crohn's disease, all in one. And they didn't have me on the correct medication until recently, in like I think it was 2014, 15, somewhere around there, a few years ago. And I've been on that medication, and I felt much better since. But in this episode, I feel a personal connection to Henry because he gets the right kind of coal for this episode. So let's play this little excerpt.
When the Welsh coal came, Henry's driver and firemen were excited. Now we'll show them, Henry, old fellow. They carefully made his fire, putting large lumps of coal like a wall round the outside. Then the glowing middle part was covered with smaller lumps. You're spoiling my fire, complained Henry. Wait and see, said the fireman. We'll have a roaring fire just when we want it. The fireman was right. When Henry reached the platform, the water was boiling nicely, and he had to let off steam. How are you, Henry? Beep, beep, beep. I feel fine. Have you a good fire, driver? Never better, sir, and plenty of steam. No record breaking, warned Sir Topham Hatt. Don't push him too hard. Henry won't need pushing, sir. I'll have to hold him back.
So, I like this episode because, like I said in the beginning, it said, or like I said before I played the clip, it said, they said that they got Henry on some Welsh coal, and in that Welsh coal they were able to help Henry, you know, fix the problems with him, kind of in that sort of situation. So that's why this one comes in at number 2. And if you guys have seen this episode, you guys know what my number 1 is, and it's kind of a given, really. So let's go to my favorite episode of Thomas and Friends by far. And as you guys have probably guessed it by now, my number 1 favorite episode of Thomas and Friends, the original series, is the Flying Kipper. Now, when most people say, oh, I like this episode, I like that episode, this episode was terrible, let me explain why this episode is my favorite, okay? This episode is my favorite because, number 1, it takes place in winter, and my birthday is in winter, and, you know, sounds kind of like I'm trying to make something up as, you know, for me to like this episode, but it takes place in winter, and I absolutely love the winter sunsets. They are amazing. And this episode also takes place with Henry and his new medication and everything. And I also like the soundtrack for this episode. I really do like it. And I also enjoy the way that things go for Henry in this episode. So without further ado, let's play one of the grandest clips of all.
Henry was ready at 5 o'clock. There was snow and frost. Men hustled and shouted, loading up the crates of fish. The last door banged. Guard showed his green lamp, and the Flying Kipper was ready to go. Come on, don't be silly, puffed Henry to the freight cars. The cars shuddered and groaned. Trickety-trock, all right. That's better, puffed Henry. Clouds of smoke and steam poured from his funnel into
Right
the
there, that
fire
sunrise.
Hurry, panted Henry. They were going well. The light grew better.
This scene right here. That scene, I know it's a drawing, and as you can see, like where my mouse is, you can clearly see that this is a drawing of a hillside, but I like it. I mean, and I like the background here for this. I like the